So a lot of times I hear, I want to create a safe space in my classroom. But taking it one step farther, what is it going to take for my classroom to be socially and emotionally safe for every child? And that means you're going to have to create a brave space.
So for having a brave space, it's very important because not only do we have events that are constantly occurring in our society that students are very aware of, whether you are aware that they are aware of it or not, and those conversations should be happening in our classrooms.
Trust is so important. If they tell you something and they know it didn't get out into the community or the principal's office, then they know they can trust you, and they are more than willing to share more in class.
We're gonna enter into our brave space thinking right now.
I am based in Los Angeles, California. I am an elementary teacher. This is my 7th year teaching. I'm currently teaching 5th grade, which is roughly ages 9 to 10. And I'm loving it. 5th grade is my favorite. And I really love seeing the students develop from really the thinking in kind of a more me and then me in the world to thinking about how can I impact the world and really moving into this community-based thinking level of starting to connect their identity, their experiences to all the things that we're talking about.
All right, so we have this word called microaggressions. Has anyone ever heard this word before? And you can just show me with the
I do teach at a school where most of my kids are BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous people of color. I am always feeling uncomfortable because I grew up as a white person who never had to talk about race. That's something that as a white person and as other white educators who may be listening to this, we just have to be okay with. Most of my students need to have these conversations. They're seeing the effect of race and the experience of that in their lives, as well as in their parents' lives, as well as in the world around them.
Oh, good. So this is brand new words. So everyone go ahead and write it down in your notebook. Write down the word microaggressions. All right, and now let's break down this word. What does micro mean? When we say, oh, that's micro, what does micro mean?
It could maybe mean small.
Small, very good. All right, so I'm going to share my screen real fast. And I want you to write micro, and underneath micro, I want you to write small. And thank you, Esmeralda, for sharing that. What does aggression mean? What does aggression mean?
When you're like what's called really like what's called, I want to say passionate about something, or like really strong, or like you have strong thoughts against something, or strong actions.
So strong thoughts, actions, emotions. Would anyone like to add on to what Amy was saying?
Strong feelings.
Strong feelings. Love it. Thank you. So now let's put this together. So we have micro, which means small. We have aggression, which means, as you all defined, wonderful job, strong thoughts, actions, emotions, strong feelings. So now we have this word, you can draw it just like how I'm doing, microaggression. So based on what those two words mean, when we put them together, what do you think microaggression means now? What is your definition?
A little bit of aggression.
A little bit of aggression.
Small actions.
Small actions.
So basically everything on the aggressions list, but without strong.
Yeah, very good. Yes. So let's write this in. So microaggression is a small act toward someone or something that is based in stereotypes, bias, emotion. So everyone write that in. So you can see how our words that we've been learning, like stereotypes and bias, are coming together to look at microaggressions. So they're these small acts, and they may seem small, right? But they actually can be really harmful and hurtful to others. Once you've written the small act part, then we're going to add in can be harmful and hurtful to others. And sometimes, just like we talked about with bias and stereotypes, we don't always know that we're doing these things. We can be harmful and hurtful to others using microaggressions without even realizing we're doing those things. Underneath your microaggressions, when you're ready, just do a T-chart for me. And on one side, I want you to write down what you notice, so noticing, and then what you wonder. Because as we go and we read these stories I'm about to pull out, you're going to spend some time noticing and wondering about microaggressions. We're going to take these notes so we can have a discussion.
I really, with this lesson, realized, okay, we need actual concrete examples of microaggressions for them to be able to identify and then have a dialogue about what a microaggression is. I choose resources over kids sharing their own experiences, one, because it's not okay for us to ask students to relive their trauma.
Thank you, everyone, for using the Brave Space. And thank you those who shared.
I focused on one poem in here that was talking about the boy and how his hair was touched on the bus without his permission, and it's called Strands.
As I read it, I want you to listen and think about what microaggression is occurring here to the character who's writing the poem. On a random Tuesday on the bus, Dennis asks me, "Can I touch your hair?" He pats it before I can respond. "It feels like a sponge," he says. My fists clench and my face gets hot. "You need to learn to wait for an answer after asking permission," I tell him and pat his hair hard. "Oh, how about that? Your hair feels like a mop," I say. I keep my fist ready, but he turns away. So thinking about what we just learned about microaggressions, it's a small act towards someone or something. What part of that poem was a microaggression, you think? What are your thoughts?
When she made when they, because I don't know their gender, so when they made a comeback to what the other person did.
Mm-hmm.
When they made the small action to just say, "Well, your hair feels like a mop."
And then some of my students too were like, "Well, I don't think he should have touched the other boy's hair back." And so then we had a discussion about like, well, he was angry. Well, what can we do with that anger? And it was actually a very interesting turn in one I didn't expect. So that also brings me to the thought that we also need to take a moment and remind ourselves, if we're doing a lesson and something new pops up, that, all right, your lesson might veer a little bit more than you expected because you didn't anticipate that understanding or that question that popped up.
So I'll read that part then real fast. On a random Tuesday on the bus, Dennis asked me, "Can I touch your hair?" He pats it before I can respond. Now let's look at the person and what happened. Now think about our stereotypes, think about our bias. Is it ever okay to touch someone's hair?
I think it was disrespectful that Dennis didn't wait for a response because that was something like consent.
Could someone speak more on the consent? What do you mean by consent? Just as a reminder for everyone.
Like, consent means that you ask somebody and they actually wait. They have to wait for a response, not just go for it before you can even say anything.
Are microaggressions harmful, even if the person didn't mean to be hurtful? Why or why not?
I think it could be hurtful because they're just saying it and they don't stop and think like, is this too hurtful or is it okay with them?
I think some people don't think they're being hurtful to the other person because they don't put themselves in their shoes and see how they feel.
All right, so take your journal right now. Just take a moment and journal. So how is bias connected to microaggressions? Have you participated in microaggressions before and didn't know it? Right? So remember, we all have bias, and this might be the uncomfortable part, is realizing, oh, I might have done a microaggression and didn't even realize I was doing that. And then, have you experienced microaggression before? So you can answer all of them or just pick one that you want to answer right now.
And then I also wanted to set intentions of how can they then take our learning and actually do something with it. It's not something that just sits with them, but it's actually something that they can then say, oh, I feel like I have learned this and now I can go and do something with it.
Like I said, this is something we're going to come back to and continue talking about as we continue to go deeper into action, into our identity, into justice, and what we can do in our own homes and our own lives to make a safe space for all of those around us.
Welcome to our class. We are going to start a new unit today. For those of you who don't know, I am located in South Carolina. I currently work in an alternative school, and it has kindergartners all the way through 12th grade. I have the high schoolers, and I love them. These students have been in the system. They are students who have been suspended and expelled. And instead of putting them out on the street for them to maneuver on their own, they come to my school, in which we give them the individualized attention to get them back on track. Y'all good? Everybody good?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I know we're waiting on Ms. Williams. The second semester is when I start bringing content in that reflects their life. And that's usually social inequalities, political inequalities, social and economic inequalities, whatever inequality you could think of. I start bringing those into my class because that is what gets their attention. Is what gets them to come into class every day because they want to see, well, what's going to happen next. Because some of the topics that we're going to talk about, we are going to be talking about some inequalities, social inequalities. And the one thing that you do need to know is it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough talking about some of this stuff. But you need to be able to recognize within yourself and within others the difficulties of speaking about certain things. I'm about to teach a unit on social justice. We are researching a little bit, exploring different topics, and I'm teaching them how to read, close read, and research all at the same time. They just don't realize it. The lesson that I taught is the first class of a unit. And this is where we establish ground rules. So let's jump in. I'm sharing my screen right here. Discussion rules. I don't know how many of you know this book, Jason Reynolds, Long Way Down. Y'all know this one? All right. This is a phenomenal book. In this, he starts out the entire book by saying 3 rules, the 3 rules of the neighborhood. You have 3 rules. 1, no crying, no matter what. 2, no snitching. And 3, revenge. So when we talk about the 3 ground rules, these are the 3 ground rules of the neighborhood. Are these the 3 ground rules that you deal with in real life?
For the most part, yes.
All right. So now let's equate this to our discussions in the classroom. When we say no crying, I'm going to take this out and say it's okay to cry. Because some of the topics that we deal with, I mean, they can be extremely emotional. So if you feel like you need to cry, cry. It's an emotional release. There is nothing wrong with crying. I know within the African American community, it says Black men are not supposed to cry because it goes to show your weakness. That correct, Mr. Goldborn and Mr. Squires? Have y'all always been taught that you are not to cry?
Yes, ma'am.
You not being able to cry in front of someone is really society instilling in men, especially Black men, toxic masculinity. I think that's really.
It also goes to show that I am comfortable enough with their situations to help them work on their situations. All right, no snitching. What's said in this class?
Don't lead his class.
Exactly. Stays in this class. All right, get revenge. When we talk about getting revenge, what is it that typically you think about getting revenge? You all said that you participate in some type of physical activity. If you lose, are you going to go out and get revenge?
Basically, I come back more harder.
So one of the key things we're saying is revenge usually takes a negative connotation. Now, we are going to take revenge and look at it a little bit differently, in that in this class, verbally, when somebody doesn't agree with you, you're going to get revenge on them, right? And in doing so, when you get revenge, you're going to come back at them with facts. All right? You're going to come back at them strategically. You're going to come back at them with a plan. Right? Are those some 3 basic rules that we can work with?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then from there, I can slowly integrate skills and strategies of learning by utilizing the things that are going around them every day. And that's what this whole unit is about, is making sure that you understand what is going on in your world around you, because regardless of how much stress you're having in your little bubble, it's just your little bubble. There's so much more going on around you, and you need to be aware.
The goal is for them to be able to walk away, and whether they are with me or in another classroom, they're able to engage in conversation critically. And yes, we set up our space to be community driven, but by the end of the year, my hope and my goal is that they'll be able to take this learning and this understanding and use it to continue to have these conversations when they're able to, and be able to have conversations even within them own selves as they grow and in their identity and grow in their own understanding of themselves in the world. The brave space concept fits into the larger goals because we're always having really critical conversations and learning.
They could be the next Einstein. They could be the next Bill Gates. They can be the next entrepreneur. So I make sure that if my students, regardless of what types of resources they have in the school, I will always invest in my students. Once they realize that someone actually believes in them, they start exploring their options and they start exploring their dreams.